Candace was the hidden blade raised by the young master of the Scott family. Picked up by Lyndon at the age of 7, she held a knife at 8, and by 15 could overthrow his rivals for him. On the day of her college entrance exams, she single-handedly rescued Lyndon from a kidnapper's den, suffering 17 stab wounds. From then on, Lyndon spoiled her rotten. He dragged her to get married as soon as she came of age, whispering vows in her ear. Candace, I'll love you for 10,000 years. Her body bore savage scars, yet every night he cradled her against his chest. His warm lips traced each disfigurement, murmuring during their most desperate embraces, Candace, you're the purest thing, never leave me. She once believed every word. Until she discovered the white swan he kept outside, he thought he had hidden it perfectly. Unaware that Candace had secretly gotten into college behind his back and the girl he cherished most was actually her closest classmate. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful novels every day. Now the story begins. On the day she returned to school with her injured leg, Candace witnessed a grand proposal. The path from the school gate to the dormitory was carpeted with white roses, the sapphire blue runner in the middle like crushed glimmers of Lake Siram's waves. Frida stood at the end of the carpet in a white dress, graceful as a swan. The man kneeling on one knee was none other than Lyndon, who had claimed he was traveling to Europe for business. Candace wore a mask, hidden in the crowd, watching them nuzzle and kiss, her arms clutching a block of ice that pierced her with cold. The man who had whispered "I'll die on you" in her ear just last night now knelt with devout reverence, begging another woman to say yes. Only then did she realize with a start that Lyndon had never intended to bring their relationship to light. Their dates always happened late at night, and their connection was never publicly acknowledged. 3 years ago, she had left once before. The Scott family and those around them who knew of their relationship all said this orphan girl without a college education wasn't worthy of City HS Scott family crown prince. It was Lyndon who mobilized his connections. Searching tirelessly for 7 days and nights, until he finally brought her back, she still remembered how he looked then, his stillness wrapped in agony, his voice trembling. Candace, where did you think you could escape to with my life? He even ordered his men to whip him 99 times, his eyes shining as he gazed at her. Candace, it's my fault for making you feel insecure. I deserve this punishment. Candace looked at his blooded back, her heart aching so much that tears kept falling. It was at that moment Lyndon handed her the permanent residency permit for Country W and the credentials for a private flight route. Candace, I'm banned from entering Country W for life. If I ever betray you, may I be punished by never seeing you again. Candace took them, only to be pulled fiercely into his embrace as if he wanted to crush her into his very bones. Candace, in this lifetime, I'll never let you need to use them, but now. The betrayal lay bare before her eyes. Turns out, she had been the fool all along. Candace stumbled dazedly to Lyndon's office villa. Before she could even confront him, she first heard his buddies inside congratulating him. Congrats Lyndon for winning the beauty's heart. Lyndon, slightly drunk, suddenly sharpened his gaze. Not a single word to anyone. If Candace finds out. The wine glass slammed heavily on the table. The brother fell silent but still cautiously asked, Lyndon, the old man is pressing hard about marriage. Should we just get the real certificate with Candace? Candace felt her blood run cold, instinctively holding her breath. Then she saw Lyndon curl his lips and toss out a marriage certificate. The old man is quite pleased with Frida. He's even given her the family heirloom. Candace froze, her ears ringing with a deafening buzz. Lyndon and Frida registered their marriage. Then what was the marriage certificate in her hand supposed to mean? Her brother was also stunned, picking up the red booklet to examine it. Then what about Candace? Lyndon locked the marriage certificate in the safe, swirling his wine glass before finally speaking. Back when I got the certificate with Candace, Grandpa had already tampered with my documents. There was no way to get a real one, he said nonchalantly. I had to fake one to win her heart. Candace is too fiery to be the lady of the Scott family. It's enough that I pamper her in private. A trace of complexity surfaced in his brother's eyes. Lyndon, Sister Candace has her ways. What if she finds out? How will we leave then? Lyndon's dark eyes turned icy. Then make sure she never knows. Tell Stan to keep a close eye on Candace. Candace smiled silently, her throat filled with bitterness. So all those times she was provoked and hurt by Stan, it was all Lyndon's doing. No wonder Stan went crazy trying to stop her on the way to school today. She'd injured her leg worse while trying to shake him off. He was clearly afraid she'd return to campus and witness this marriage proposal. Before she could recover from the heart-wrenching truth, she heard his brother ask the very question she wanted answered. Lyndon, who do you truly love? Lyndon's eyes softened with tenderness as if recalling something. Candace, of course. But for the next 3 years, I'll also devote myself wholeheartedly to Frida. His fingers traced the rim of the glass. Frida is too pristine, like an 18-year-old Candace. Had it not been for that time she stormed Norman's house for me, Candace should have remained just like this. I can't raise Candace all over again, so I'll raise Frida instead. That way, there'll be no regrets for Candace either. His brother silently took a swig of liquor before asking, Lyndon, tell me the truth, do you still blame yourself for Candace spending those 3 days and nights storming Norman's house to save you? Candace's heart sank deeper and deeper. Norman's house, those 3 days and nights were truly a nightmare. No one believed she emerged unscathed. Only Lyndon said he trusted her. Countless nights later, he'd kiss away her tears, whispering my Candace is the purest. This time Lyndon remained silent, merely draining his glass in one gulp. That silence was the cruelest confirmation. Candace tightly shut her eyes, letting the tears fall freely. He didn't believe her at all, even looked down on her. Lyndon's hoarse voice sounded again. For the wedding in 7 days, keep it hidden from Candace. It'd be best if she had an accidental injury and stayed in the hospital for a while. Candace's tightly wound heartstring finally snapped. Lyndon's words were like a sharp knife, piercing the deepest part of her heart. It turned out that her pain had long become a calculable tool in his eyes. A means to control her. Buzz. 3 messages flooded into her phone. One was from Frida, accompanied by a marriage certificate photo and cheerful emojis. Candace, I finally made it official with my crush. Doesn't this red marriage certificate look perfect on us? A message from Lyndon. Candace, I miss you. I'll come back to you as soon as I finish things here. A message from my mentor. Candace, are you really giving up the offer from W Country's Music Academy? Your talent shouldn't be wasted. I hope you'll reconsider. Candace stared at the marriage certificate, paired with his I miss you, like a resounding slap across her face, mocking all her foolishness. A dense pain spread through her heart, making even her fingers tremble. She slowly opened the message window and began to type a reply. The reply to Frida contained just 2 words, congratulations. The response to her advisor followed immediately. Mr. Peter, I accept this offer. Frida responded quickly, sending a photo of 2 clasped hands, the diamond rings on their ring fingers glaring dazzlingly on the screen. The caption couldn't hide her excitement. He said I'm his white swan. The mentor replied almost instantly, wonderful. The orchestra members will return home soon. They'll arrange the flights. Remember to report in 7 days. Good luck. Candace let out a long sigh at the screen. She stuffed the hidden diploma into her backpack. The certificate originally meant as a 7th anniversary surprise had now become her ticket to escape. The dark web page still glowed as she gently pressed the send button on the missing person notice. Through the dense plane tree leaves, she could see the silhouette of the man in the villa, still looking as composed and calculating as ever. Lyndon, this time, I'm really leaving. Since someone who claimed to be family could betray her, she would go find her real family. She staggered back to her residence. As expected, Lyndon didn't return that night. At 3 in the morning, the phone vibrated. A message from him popped up. Candace, there's an urgent business trip for work. Wait for me at home. Love you. As dawn approached, Frida's message appeared again, this time with a video. Candace, I'm in City S. He actually built me a swan castle. I'm so happy. In the video, at the center of a 10,000 square meter musical fountain stood a massive white crystal swan. Sunlight spilled over it, scattering dazzling reflections that made it hard to keep one's eyes open. Lyndon revealed only half his face, his voice dripping with sweetness. Frida, who are you messaging? Of course, it's Candace. Frida giggled coquettishly and looped her arms around his neck. Mr. Lyndon, what's the matter? Candace is my best classmate. The camera suddenly turns to focus directly on Lyndon's face. Candace clearly sees his pupils constrict sharply before gradually relaxing again. Of course, in his eyes, how could she, Candace, possibly set foot on campus? He used to always hold her tightly in his arms, gently stroking the top of her head, his eyes burning with possessive madness. Candace, don't go to school. Okay, I don't want my Candace to be noticed by others. He kissed her earlobe. You're so beautiful. What if some male classmate steals you away? But she carried a musical dream in her heart and secretly enrolled in university against his wishes. During school, she wore a mask every day and avoided all interaction with the opposite sex. Her classmates thought she was just an eccentric loner, but she didn't care. On the day she received her diploma, she secretly practiced at Sunder Tone several times, planning to wave the certificate at him when he returned and say, "See, I didn't get kidnapped, did I? Then she'd drag him to attend the graduation ceremony. It now appears that the one who was lured away was actually Lyndon. Frida was the one who initially approached them, and Candace always felt her enthusiasm was a bit excessive, as if she had some ulterior motive, but later, they discovered they shared many common interests. They both loved horseback riding, archery, the color white, and playing the piano. Frida had even shared a little girl's secret with her, Candace. A dreamy guy said he likes me and wants to support me financially. I don't know what to do. At that time, she was immersed in the sweetness of her love with Lyndon and laughingly advised her, just follow your heart. Had she not witnessed that marriage proposal, she probably would never have known that the dreamy guy Frida mentioned was none other than Lyndon, who told her I love you every day. Tears flowed into the heart, their bitterness spreading through every limb. The video continued to play. Lyndon had already scooped Frida into his arms, his voice dripping with tender adoration. Sweetheart, what did you just call me, Mr. Lyndon? Feeling bold, aren't we? Now it's time for your husband to properly punish you. The video abruptly ended. Candace's phone slipped from her palm and fell into the corner of the sofa. She closed her eyes, curling into herself as her shoulders trembled uncontrollably. That intimate term of endearment, Lyndon had never once called her that. She used to think he was just cold by nature, not good at sweet talk. Only now does she realize it wasn't that he couldn't, but that he wouldn't, for her. Frida's messages kept popping up one after another. Candace, he's amazing in bed. I really hit the jackpot. So shy Tilda, the wedding gift you gave me was torn apart by him. Woo woo. Candace, you said your husband is always clinging to you too. Share some tips with me. I can't take it anymore Tilda. Candace felt as if a gaping wound had been torn open in her heart, letting the cold wind rush in. She remembered the wedding gift Frida had asked her for. It was a piece of lingerie she had shopped at 3 stores before finally choosing. She closed her eyes in agony, a wave of nausea rising from the numbness in her heart, choking her breath. The friend she had trusted with all her heart, the man she had loved to the core, had together wounded her beyond recognition. Could all this really be just a coincidence? The phone suddenly rang with Lyndon's distinctive notification tone. Opening it, she saw a photo of him signing a contract with a client dressed in a suit, smiling effortlessly, accompanied by his usual gentle caption, Candace, the meeting's over. I'll make it in time for dinner with you. There'll be a surprise. His act was flawless. Had it not been for watching Frida's videos, she might still be as before, easily swayed by his sweet talk. Obediently staying in the web of lies he spun, lost in beautiful dreams. At 6 p.m, Lyndon pushed the door open right on time. His tailored suit was impeccably pressed without a single wrinkle, carrying the scent of fur cologne she had gifted him. His neck and wrists were clean, bearing no trace of any intimate marks. His eyes brimmed with the same tenderness as always, cradling a bouquet of white roses in his arms while holding her favorite chocolates. He leaned down to plant a kiss on her forehead. Candace, I'm back. Candace watched coldly as he deftly arranged the flowers in the vase before turning to change clothes. Dinner was set at a piano restaurant, with the harbor's deep and tranquil nightscape visible through the window. Amid the soothing piano melody, Lyndon pushed the sliced lamb shank toward her, his brow slightly furrowed. Candace, you're angry, not a question, but a certainty. 3 times. You've ignored my messages 3 times now. He reached out to hold her hand, gazing steadily at her. Is it because I missed our 7th anniversary? Candace's hand trembled slightly, her heart stung as if pierced by a fine needle. He knew everything, yet deliberately chose to kneel on one knee before Frida on their anniversary. Now mentioning the anniversary would be nothing short of ironic. There had never been a real marriage between them in the first place. She lifted her eyes, her cold and weary gaze piercing straight into his, and asked deliberately, word by word, then, have you ever done anything to betray me? Lyndon gripped her hand across the dining table, his voice trembling. Candace, I've told you, you're my life. If I ever do anything to betray you, may I lose you completely. He gazed at her, his eyes filled with sincerity. So, Candace, I will never betray you. Candace lowered her eyes and chuckled. All right, I understand. As you wish. Soon. You'll lose me completely. Clearly, Lyndon had misunderstood. He raised his hand in a gesture, and thousands of light points suddenly illuminated outside the window. Tens of thousands of drones soared into the night sky, piecing together silhouettes of an embracing couple. Amidst the gasps and envious murmurs of the crowd, Lyndon pulled Candace into his embrace. As the shifting light and shadow in the sky formed the words I love you, his breath brushed past her ear as he whispered tenderly, Candace, I will love you forever. She smiled mockingly. When she turned her head, She met Lindon's gaze. He was staring at a figure in the corner of the restaurant. It was Frida. 2 empty wine bottles stood before her on the dining table, her despondent posture resembling a rain-beaten lily of the valley, lonely and pitiable. Lindon suddenly tightened his grip on her hand. Only when Candice cried out in pain did he snap back to reality, hastily apologizing. "Sorry, Candice. There's an urgent matter at the company. I'll have the driver take you home." Candice gazed at the untouched dinner spread across the table, her lips curling into a mocking smile. She stopped the car at the street corner, dismissed the driver, turned the car around, and headed back. From a distance, she saw Lindon carrying the limp Frida, rushing frantically toward the ambulance. She followed the ambulance to the hospital, watching helplessly as Lindon carried the unconscious figure inside. Screaming hoarsely, "Doctor, my wife is allergic to alcohol, save my wife." As the nurse wheeled Frida into the emergency room, Lindon collapsed to his knees like a puppet with its strings cut. The sight made Candice's heart clench violently. It was just like that year when she had rushed out of the Norman household. He had been equally panic-stricken then, staggering as he clutched the doctor's hand and begged, "Save Candice, she's my life." A similar scene. Yet the person in his arms and the name on his lips had changed. His vows of loving you forever dissipated completely, like soap bubbles. Frida was wheeled out when Lindon immediately grabbed her hand, his face pale. "Darling, I'll agree to anything you want, just don't scare me like this again." Frida turned her head weakly. "Go be with her. I was always an outsider anyway. Didn't you say you loved her? Why bother about whether I live or die?" Lindon hurriedly covered her mouth, his eyes showing an urgency he'd never displayed toward Candice. "Darling, between us, she's the outsider. Promise me, you won't hurt yourself anymore." Candice stood behind him, her heart feeling as if it were being slowly carved by a blunt knife, the pain so intense it nearly suffocated her. Suddenly, she remembered the time in the Scott family's ancestral hall, when Grandpa Scott was about to discipline her with the family rules, and Lindon shielded her desperately beneath him. His eyes bloodshot as he roared, "Candice is my life. Compared to her, even you take a backseat. Who are you, an outsider, to lay a hand on her? Come at me if you want to fight." How laughable. It hadn't been long before she became the outsider in his words. Her heart felt as if struck by a sledgehammer, leaving her frozen in place, unable to move. Right at that moment, a commotion erupted at the other end of the hallway, and a nurse's tray clattered to the floor with a loud crash. Lindon swiftly kicked it away, shielding Frida without a scratch, but the glass bottle containing medicine flew straight toward Candice's calf. She stumbled and fell, broken glass piercing her palm as blood instantly trickled in rivulets. The crowd erupted in gasps. Lindon glanced back without so much as a frown, merely tossing a check from his wallet at her feet before turning to escort Frida away. Candice's tears finally came crashing down. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. Only then did the young nurse snap out of it, hastily helping her up to tend to the wound. In the treatment room, the murmurs of the nurses drifted to her ears. "Mr. Lindon's wife is so lucky. He's both handsome and devoted. You don't know the truth. That wasn't an allergic reaction at all. Once she got to the emergency room, she told us she was deliberately testing her husband. Never expected she'd scare him that badly." One nurse looked at Candice's left hand wrapped like a dumpling, her face full of sympathy. "Sigh, you really drew the short straw here. At least your face wasn't injured. But then again, you didn't land a husband like that. Some people just get all the luck while others don't." Candice listened blankly, her entire body cold, the stinging pain in her palm piercing straight to her heart. She silently put away the check, her gaze falling on the tray. The blood-stained Buddhist prayer beads lay quietly. That was Lindon's offering from years ago. When he knelt through 1,000 steps to obtain them, he personally copied Buddhist scriptures, prayed before the Buddha for 49 days, and only then solemnly placed them on her wrist. He said at the time, "Candice, as long as my love remains, this bracelet will protect you forever." The words still echoed in her ears. But his heart had long changed, and along with it, the bracelet refused to protect her any longer. If that's the case, then she wanted none of it. Candice had just left the nursing room when Lindon came to ask the nurse to change Frida's dressing. His peripheral vision caught the bracelet on the tray, and his pupils abruptly constricted. He was about to step forward for a closer look when his phone rang. The screen flashed with the name Frida, and her sweet, honeyed voice came through the receiver. "Honey, I have a headache." He glanced once more at the bracelet on the tray, fingers curling slightly at his side, but ultimately turned and followed the nurse. The rain began to fall after nightfall, her old wounds ached faintly. Candice curled under the blankets, trembling uncontrollably. In the past, on every rainy night, Lyndon would always wrap her entirely in his arms. Using his warm body to chase away all the cold, he would whisper tenderly, "Candace, these wounds were suffered for me. I'll stay with you every rainy night from now on." Now, he has broken his promise. The phone vibrated slightly. Frida sent another message. "Candace, there's an older woman in his house. He said he stayed out of gratitude. I was so angry that I punished him by making him stand in the heavy rain like a longing husband." In the attached video, Lyndon stood in the pouring rain without an umbrella, his high-end suit already soaked through, clinging tightly to his body and outlining his slender frame. The intermittent flashes of lightning illuminated his pale yet stubborn face. Candace looked at the familiar face in the video and suddenly smiled. But as she smiled, tears began rolling down her cheeks. Repaying kindness. If it was about repaying kindness, why didn't he lift her toward the sky instead of using love as a cage? Ruthlessly breaking her wings, his message from the evening was still saved in her phone. "Candace, there's an international conference tonight. Don't wait up for me." How laughable. His so-called international conference was actually just an excuse to charm another woman. She closed her eyes in anguish, tears soaking through the pillowcase. The next morning, the bedroom door creaked open softly. Dressed in loungewear, Lyndon walked in, his eyes bloodshot. He walked to the bedside and gently held Candace's bandaged hand. "Candace, who hurt you? Was it Stan acting up again?" I clearly informed him. Mid-sentence, he caught himself before revealing too much. He kissed Candace's forehead. "Candace, I'll take you to the horse ranch later to relax. Whoever hurt you, I'll make them pay." Candace spoke softly. "No need, I'll handle it myself." In the following hours, he showed meticulous care. He carried her to wash up, fed her breakfast bite by bite, and applied the most effective medication for her. Candace stared blankly at the red marks on his neck, allowing him to maneuver her like a soulless puppet. Scott's family horse ranch connects to a golf course. Just as they arrived at the venue, a flash of white appeared in the distance. Frida stood beside a male client in a golf skirt, forcing a smile while looking aggrieved. Lyndon paused mid-step, tilting his head to look at Candace, his tone deliberately casual. "That's the new assistant the company hired. She signed a sponsorship agreement with us and just graduated this year." Candace gave a light laugh. "Aren't you going to say hello?" Lyndon's gaze remained fixed on her, his expression solemn as if taking a vow. "Candace, you're my wife, everyone else is irrelevant." Candace said nothing more, tightened her grip on the reins, mounted her horse, and rode off in the opposite direction without a word. Lyndon kept pace beside her on horseback. But his gaze kept drifting uncontrollably toward the golf course, his mind wandering as if he'd lost his soul. Just as he saw the male client's hand about to rest on Frida's waist, Lyndon suddenly yanked the reins to halt his horse. "Candace, I just remembered I forgot to return a client's call. I'll have a staff member come accompany you." Candace let out a derisive laugh and flicked the reins to urge the horse forward, riding into the hidden thicket. The faint, coquettish cries of a woman drifted through the air. Then came a man's low, hoarse voice laced with laughter. "Baby, where did he touch you? Tell your husband, and I'll wash it off for you." Don't touch there." The woman's voice, wrapped in shyness, pierced the eardrums like a fine needle. Candace reined in her horse and peered through the sparse leaves. Two figures were entangled together, Frida and Lyndon. Rage, disgust, despair. A storm of emotions churned in her chest before finally settling into dead silence. She turned her horse to leave, but the steed suddenly spooked and bolted uncontrollably. Candace clutched the reins desperately, trying to steady the horse, but the entire herd was startled, plunging the scene into chaos. The staff rushed over in panic, yet no one dared to approach recklessly. Just as she was about to calm the startled horse, the reins snapped with a sharp crack. The tremendous momentum flung her violently through the air, her body crashing heavily toward the ground. Before her consciousness plunged completely into darkness, she saw Lyndon's ghostly pale face and heard his heart-wrenching scream, "Candace." Yet in his arms, he always tightly shielded the frightened Frida, half asleep. Candace heard voices conversing. "Mr. Lyndon, we've checked the stables, someone replaced the reins with discarded ones. That day, only MS. Frida touched the horse MS. Candace usually rides." After a long pause, Lyndon's warning voice sounded. "Let this matter end here. Don't let a third person know." After a pause, he added, "Have someone deliver DS's signature dishes here." The assistant seemed momentarily stunned. "But you always used to insist on personally cooking for MS, Candace." Before finishing the sentence, probably catching sight of Lyndon's gloomy expression, The assistant hastily corrected, I spoke out of turn. After the man's footsteps faded away, a woman's sobbing immediately followed, it's all my fault, I really didn't mean to, if I hadn't gone to the golf course, I wouldn't have distracted you, and you could have focused on protecting Ms. Candice. Then came the soft sound of a thermos lid opening. This is soup I've been simmering all night, consider it my apology to Ms. Candice. Lyndon suddenly grabbed her hand, frowning at the red marks. Baby, who told you to hurt yourself? Come on. Hubby will take you to apply medicine, and also, punish you for not taking care of yourself. With that, he scooped her up in his arms. Frida asked with a trembling voice, then what about Ms. Candice? Darling, your husband is furious right now, how could he possibly care about anyone else? After the footsteps completely faded away, Candice slowly opened her eyes as a tear slid down the corner of her eye. She moved her limbs slightly. Fortunately, the injuries weren't too severe. The nurse making rounds brightened up when she saw her awake and said with a smile, your husband is so good to you. He hired several specialists to examine you and even had them stay in the hotel next to the hospital on standby. While you were being examined, he knelt outside the entire time and wouldn't get up until he was sure you were okay. Candice said calmly, her eyes expressionless, he's not my husband. Just as the nurse looked surprised, Lyndon hurriedly pushed the door open, interrupting the conversation. Candice, you're awake, I bought some food, are you hungry? Candice glanced at the takeout packaging from DS restaurant in his hand, then at the glaring lipstick stain on his collar. Without exposing him, she simply looked up and asked, have you looked into the matter at the racetrack? Lyndon handed her a glass of warm water, his voice betraying nothing. I've checked. The accident happened because the harness was worn out from years of neglect, and the newly changed fodder didn't suit the horse's taste. The staff member responsible has already been dismissed. He lowered his head, his thumb rubbing against his index finger, a telltale sign whenever he lied. Candice, at the time, Frida came to ask me about work matters, which is why I couldn't protect you right away. That young girl feels quite guilty about it too, so let's just drop it, okay, no need to pursue it further. Candice closed her eyes, dazedly recalling how during high school, a male classmate had pricked her hand with a pen tip. Lyndon found out, and within 3 days, that boy's entire family vanished completely from City H. Now that she's been schemed against and hurt by Frida, he casually tells her to let it go. Her heart felt clogged with cotton, stifling and suffocating. Yet the sharp pain from days before had faded away. She let out a soft sigh, her gaze resting on the drifting clouds outside the window. Soon, very soon, she would be able to live her own free life. 3 days later, Candice was discharged from the hospital. Lyndon took her for an exquisite makeover, then led her to H University. Candice, today is H University's graduation ceremony. The president specifically invited me, so it's a perfect opportunity to take you out for some fresh air. She sat beside Lyndon, watching Frida deliver her speech on stage as an outstanding graduate. Lyndon's gaze was fixed, his eyes brimming with adoration and admiration. In truth, this speaking opportunity should have been hers. When her advisor first asked her to speak as an outstanding graduate, she was overjoyed. She imagined Lyndon sitting in the audience, looking bewildered at first, then swelling with pride for her. But after witnessing that marriage proposal, she declined the opportunity. She wanted to leave quietly. Lyndon no longer deserved the surprise she had prepared. Frida, after stepping down from the stage, Lyndon excused himself to the restroom and left. Candice seized the moment to slip her newly received graduation gown over her evening dress, then quickly found her advisor to take a photo together. When the advisor saw her, her eyes filled with warm approval as she handed over the plane ticket and documents. Candice, may your journey ahead be radiant with promise. No sooner had I bid farewell to my mentor and turned around than Lyndon approached. Seeing her in this state, his face was full of surprise. Candice, why are you wearing a graduation gown? What's that in your hand? 6. Candice looked up calmly. I borrowed it from the university. I never went to college, so I wanted to experience it. She shook the plane ticket and ID in her hand, her tone indifferent. I found these, was just about to take them to security. Seeing the disappointment in her eyes, Lyndon felt a twinge of guilt rise in his heart. If not for his obsessive possessiveness back then, Candice should have been among today's graduates, standing on stage in academic robes receiving applause. He softened his tone, then I'll go with you. As he spoke, he reached out to take it. Just then, the principal came over to invite him for a photo. Candice turned sideways to dodge it. You go ahead, I can manage on my own. Walking along the path, Frida was leaning against a tree waiting for her, with undisguised smugness on her face. You already know, don't you? Oh, right, I've sent you everything I should. She tilted her head and smiled. Falling off a horse must have hurt, didn't it? Do you know what he said when he first approached me? Frida deliberately paused. He said, "Ms. Frida, I want to support you as your husband for 3 years." Candace twitched the corner of her mouth and sneered. So, you deliberately approached me from the very beginning, right? Was it fun to mess with me? Frida laughed even more gleefully. Yes, I just wanted to see what you looked like, to understand why they all couldn't forget about you. Don't understand, it's fine, you'll know soon enough. Her phone suddenly rang. Glancing at the screen, she then looked at Candace with the triumphant gleam of a victor. "My husband's calling me. See you tonight." Candace quickly understood what "see you tonight" meant. Lyndon had prepared a birthday celebration for her aboard a luxury cruise ship. Just as the opening fireworks were about to ignite, Lyndon called Frida onto the stage before turning to her. "Candace, what a coincidence Assistant Bob shares your birthday. Why don't you both kick things off together?" He added. The girl has been feeling terribly guilty about the incident at the racetrack. Consider today as a chance to let bygones be bygones. Candace's gaze fell upon Frida's shimmering diamond-studded gown, the very one Lyndon had gifted her for Valentine's Day last year. He had said at the time, "Only my Candace deserves such brilliance." Lyndon, noticing her staring at the dress, hastily explained, "Vi, Assistant Bob didn't bring a suitable gown, so I just randomly picked one from your closet." He leaned close to her ear. "Be good, I'll buy you a new one later." "Something even better." Candace gently pushed him away, her expression blank. "My hand injury hasn't healed yet. Let Assistant Bob open the event." Hearing this, Lyndon immediately pulled her to sit down, smoothing the stray hairs at her forehead. "I was too busy and forgot. Does your hand still hurt?" She withdrew her hand. "Go entertain the guests. I'd like to be alone for a while." After Lyndon left, the clamor in the hall seemed to grow distant. The projection lights suddenly illuminated, falling upon the grand piano at the center. A familiar melody began to flow. Lyndon and Frida sat side by side before the piano, sharing an intimacy that left no room for others. The two performed in perfect harmony. As the music ended, thunderous applause erupted. The whispers of the guests also reached Candace's ears. "Isn't this piece a must-play for couples? Mr. Lyndon, is this an indirect official announcement? Don't talk nonsense." "I heard Mr. Lyndon has a treasured one he raised since childhood, who once saved his life. He guards them as preciously as his own eyeballs." "Ha, you mean that lifesaver who was tormented for 3 days and nights at the Norman family's place? What man could endure that?" A chill instantly swept through her entire body as Candace shivered uncontrollably. Lyndon pushed through the crowd and returned to Candace's side. "Candace, do you like it? I prepared it especially for you." Frida said she happened to know how to play. Candace stared fixedly at him. His voice gradually weakened as he reached out to hold her cold, trembling hand. "Are you jealous, Candace? There's nothing between me and her. We've been together for 18 years, you have to believe me. You're the only one in my heart." She signed a sponsorship agreement with the company. "Otherwise I wouldn't have kept her by my side." Lyndon clutched her hand as they stepped onto the deck, just as distant fireworks soared into the sky, bursting in clusters to blanket the entire night canvas. "Candace, His words were abruptly interrupted by the ringing of a phone. It was Frida's call. Her voice filled with terror. "Mr. Lyndon, do you know where Ms. Candace is? She arranged to meet me at the dock to get her dress back. I've already changed and was about to return it to her. It's so dark here." Who are you?" The sound of a phone hitting the ground followed, mingled with a woman's scream and men's raucous laughter. "Who sent this little lamb into Norman family's territory? Brothers, let's welcome her properly. Help me. Don't touch me, Ms. Candace, where are you? Get away." With the sound of tearing fabric, the call abruptly ended. Lyndon clutched his phone with a death grip, whipping his head around to stare at Candace. "It wasn't me." Candace pulled out her phone as proof. "I never even spoke to her." Lyndon suddenly laughed, pulling her tightly into his embrace. "Candace, what are you afraid of? How could I ever doubt you over some outsider?" Candace stared blankly at his face contorted with restraint, unable to decipher his thoughts in that moment. "Candace, I'll go check what's going on." He released her, his fingertips brushing her cheek. "It's not safe tonight. I'll have the bodyguards take you back to the villa first. When you wake up, everything will be fine." He summoned the bodyguards and personally watched them escort Candace into the car. As the car door closed, thunder cracked across the sky, and raindrops the size of beans began pelting down, quickly turning into a torrential downpour. The once blazing fireworks on the cruise ship were drenched by the downpour. reduced to mere scattered embers, a perfect metaphor for her 18-year bond with Lyndon, abruptly extinguished. Candace stared through the curtain of rain at the man standing in the storm, his figure soon swallowed by the mist. The next second, a black cloth was yanked over her head, the pungent scent of chemicals flooded her nostrils, and her consciousness plunged into darkness, before losing awareness. She suddenly remembered Lyndon's icy gaze as she boarded the car. He did it on purpose, deliberately using tenderness to numb her, making her lower her guard. When she woke again, she was dressed in casual clothes, her hands and feet bound with rough rope, her mouth sealed with tape. In her field of vision appeared Lyndon's figure. He merely gave her an indifferent glance before looking away. She wanted to scream, to demand answers, but couldn't muster the strength, as the bodyguards dragged her past him. His words cut like knives. "Candace, just because you were ruined by the Norman family, doesn't mean you should drag Frida down with you." Candace's tears burst forth uncontrollably. He'd finally said it. He'd never believed she'd left the Norman family with her innocence intact. No wonder, when she found out she was pregnant, she lost the baby in an accidental car crash. It was no accident at all. He didn't believe the child was his. She regretted it. "I regret risking everything to save him, only to be met with his disdain and betrayal, even causing the death of their own child with his own hands. Send her to Norman's house and bring Frida back." The heartless words made Candace struggle desperately. She refused. She couldn't go back to that hell again, but her limbs were pinned down tightly, leaving her without even a shred of strength to resist. Just as she was on the verge of breaking down, she heard Lyndon suddenly soften his tone. "Candace, wait for me. I'll come back to save you soon." She closed her eyes, letting the tears fall, watching her figure being dragged away. Lyndon suddenly felt a pang of panic and shouted sharply, "Wait, pull up her sleeve." The bodyguard complied, revealing her bare left wrist devoid of any jewelry. Lyndon's tense nerves suddenly relaxed. No, there was no Buddhist prayer bead bracelet. It wasn't Candace. This body double looked too much like Candace, so similar that it almost fooled him. Grandpa once said, the Scott family had already arranged a family for this stand-in, and she was willing, once again. He had his bodyguards pull up the surveillance footage of Candace sitting quietly in the villa. Only after confirming the person on screen was safe and sound did he finally allow the stand-in to be taken into the Norman family. All of this was unknown to Candace, who had been sent into the Norman family as a replacement. She witnessed with her own eyes as Frida emerged covered in bruises and tattered clothes. As she passed by, the woman flashed her a triumphant smile, silently mouthing "drop dead," before staggering into Lyndon's arms. "Don't be afraid, baby, I'm here to take you home," Lyndon gently soothed while removing his coat to wrap around Frida, carefully cradling her in his arms before driving away without a backward glance. Behind them, the heavy iron gate clanged shut with a resounding thud, sealing Candace completely within the hellish confines of the Norman residence. Before she could catch her breath from the suffocating despair, an iron chain crashed down around her neck. The other end of the chain was held firmly in the grip of Rodney, the ruling patriarch of the Norman family. Adjusting his gold-rimmed glasses, he leisurely twirled his chain. "Miss Candace, we meet again. Back then when I asked you to spend the night with me, you insisted on preserving your purity for Lyndon, even daring to gamble by breaking into my Norman family's gate of hell formation." He chuckled lightly. "What a pity. Lyndon still thought you'd been defiled by me, so much so that he'd even sacrifice his own flesh and blood. This time it's even more amusing, for another woman's sake. He's personally delivered you back into my hands." Rodney bent down. "Candace, you can't escape this time." He reached out and tore the tape from her mouth, the strong adhesive pulling painfully at her skin. Then, her chin was gripped harshly as a cold pill was forced down her throat. Rodney dragged her into a clean room with only a large bed, tossing her phone aside. "The drug will take effect in 10 minutes. You have 10 chances to call Lyndon. If he can get here within 10 minutes, I'll let you go. Don't try anything funny. You can only call him, otherwise, you're staying here for good." Candace felt the heat rapidly rising in her abdomen, her fingers trembling as she dialed the number she knew by heart. The first time, there was only the monotonous busy tone. The second time, the third time, until the 9th attempt, no one answered the call. Rodney stood by with crossed arms, a triumphant smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Candace felt her heart sinking deeper into despair. The 10th time, the call was finally answered. She practically screamed, "Brother, come save me. Rodney drugged me." This brother was their secret code. They had agreed that whenever she called him brother, he would know the situation was critical and would come to her rescue as fast as possible. But what came through the receiver wasn't the expected anxious panic, but rather Lyndon's barely contained excitement. "Darling, you're pregnant. This is wonderful," followed by Frida's tearful cooing. "Honey, you scared me to death just now. My stomach suddenly hurt so much. Don't be afraid. I'll take you to the hospital right away." Lyndon's voice was full of tension. "That MS, Candice, darling, the most important thing right now is you and the baby. Don't overthink other matters. Be good. What about our wedding? It'll happen as scheduled, of course." Oops. My finger slipped and I accidentally hung up. "Gotta go now." The dial tone rang out like a rusty blunt knife, slowly cleaving apart Candice's last shred of hope. Rodney let out a derisive laugh as he picked up his own phone to dial Lyndon's number. Lyndon answered instantly, his voice icy and impatient. "Rodney, I've already handed the person over to you. Don't bother me again." Rodney turned the speakerphone to maximum volume and chuckled. "Oh, then I'll handle them as I please. I don't care if you kill them, just don't come whining to me." Lyndon's roar was mixed with Frida's startled cry. "Frida, what's wrong with you?" The call ended with a sharp click. Rodney, his clammy hand brushed against her cheek. Candice jerked her head away, trembling with disgust. "Heard that. Now you should give up completely." She grabbed her phone and dialed again. Only one thought filled her mind. "Lyndon, pick up the phone." When the cold electronic prompt "The number you have dialed is powered off" sounded, Candice's heart plummeted into an abyss. He turned off his phone, staring at the darkened phone screen. Candice laughed until tears streamed down her face. So this is the love Lyndon spoke of. While she was struggling on the brink of hell, he was celebrating the arrival of a new life with another woman. In a daze, she seemed to see the 7-year-old Lyndon who had rescued her from a pack of wild dogs. The boy's eyes sparkled like stars as he handed her a few steaming buns. "Eat your fill, then we'll chase them all away. After that, I'll take you home." By 16. He had driven off every boy who pursued her, his arrogant brows declaring, "How dare any of you chase after my girl?" The scene abruptly shifts. The man who once vowed to love her for 10,000 years is now on one knee, presenting a diamond ring to another woman. All resistance suddenly loses its strength. Heat surges through her body, and even Rodney's sanctimonious face inexplicably takes on a strangely alluring quality. She bites down hard on her arm, the pain bringing a fleeting clarity to her consciousness. Rodney held a stopwatch. The clear countdown sounded. 10, 9, 1, bang. The sound of a door being breached echoed. The black-clad intruder knocked out Rodney with a single punch. Candice followed the faint light and saw a tall, lean man at the forefront. As he drew closer, his striking features became clear. There was an inexplicable sense of familiarity about him. His voice seemed to come from very far away. "Candice, I'm your fiancé. Your brother sent me to take you home." Candice, are you okay, boss? If this medicine isn't, there will be serious side effects." The subordinate's voice carried urgency. Candice felt something cold being pressed into her hand. The man before her continued whispering coaxingly, "Candice, I'm your fiancé. We'll get married when we return. Right now, I'm here to save you." She felt herself nearly melting from the scorching heat, unable to hear anything clearly. Instinctively reaching out to embrace the man before her, what followed happened as naturally as flowing water. When a sliver of consciousness remained, Candice whispered to herself in her heart, "Lyndon, we can never go back." When she hazily woke again, Candice saw the scenery on both sides rapidly receding. Belatedly, she realized someone was carrying her in their arms as they walked. Noticing her open eyes, the man lowered his head and pressed a remote into her palm. "Candice, press it. And you'll have nothing more to do with anything here." Candice stared blankly at the remote control, her fingertip pressing down under the man's encouraging gaze. The man chuckled softly. "There we go." His large hand took the remote and tossed it aside casually, then gently patted her head. "Don't worry. Everything you need is packed. Your phone has been mailed to that person." The man paused. "It contains everything he needs to know." Candice nodded. She had too many questions. But her throat hurt even when breathing, so she had to let it go. Little did she know, the moment she pressed the remote, 2 bursts of flames shot into the sky. One was the Norman family's stronghold, the other was the villa she once shared with Lyndon. On the exclusive flight route to Country W that Lyndon had arranged for her, the plane would plunge into the deep sea in 10 minutes, as the man carried her onto the private jet and carefully placed her in the seat. His gentle coaxing whispered in her ear, "Be good, we're going home." Candice closed her eyes softly. "Lyndon, from now on, whether you marry or have children, it has nothing to do with me." Candice, on the other side, Lyndon was waiting outside the hospital ward, his custom-tailored suit draped over his left arm. his deep-set eyes fixed on Stan across from him. Is Candace settled in? I only asked you to give her some minor, inconsequential injuries, just enough to avoid Grandpa's suspicion. Once this wedding is over, I'll go pick her up immediately. Stan glanced up at him, his eyes briefly flickering with an indescribable mix of mockery and pity before reverting to their usual dull, obedient expression. Mr. Lyndon, rest assured, everything has been arranged exactly as you instructed. Ms. Candace has no communication devices with her, ensuring she won't hear a single word about your wedding with Ms. Frida. Are you sure? Lyndon suddenly stepped forward, grabbing Stan by the collar, his eyes burning with fury. The villa where I lived with Candace for 5 years was burned to the ground, and you call this a proper arrangement? The villa fire was truly an accident, Stan hurriedly defended, and at that time Ms. Candace wasn't even in the villa at all, honey. Frida's soft, delicate voice came from the hospital room, instantly diffusing the tense standoff between the two. Lyndon released his grip, the ferocity on his face vanishing completely as it melted into a gentle smile. Pushing the door open, he entered the hospital room. Baby, if you're still not feeling well, we can cancel today's wedding. No, Frida shook her head, gently wrapping her arms around his waist from behind. Lyndon's body stiffened almost imperceptibly. I want to marry you right now. He subtly freed himself from the arms encircling his waist, lowering his gaze to conceal the turbulent darkness swirling in his eyes. All right, I'll have someone arrange it right away. The wedding was grand. Reporters from major media outlets were also invited by the old man. Lyndon went through the motions expressionlessly, while Frida beside him occasionally leaned lightly against him. The reporter caught on immediately and captured their loving moment. Lyndon's expression darkened gradually until he could bear it no longer. He turned his head and whispered a warning only the two of them could hear. That's enough. Don't overdo the act. Frida tilted her face up with a sweet, innocent smile. Got it, Mr. Lyndon. No sooner had the words left her lips than she rose on tiptoe and planted a kiss on his cheek. The moment was perfectly captured by the cameras, becoming headline news across major media outlets that very day. Scott family CEO ties the knot, shares sweet kiss with bride. Lyndon closed his eyes, forcing himself not to piece together Candace's image through Frida's silhouette. At the head of the table, Grandpa Scott watched the scene unfold before him, his face brimming with satisfaction. At first, he was utterly disappointed in this grandson. A descendant of the Scott family, how could he waste all his thoughts on mere romantic entanglements? Yet this brat repeatedly defied him for the sake of Candace, that orphan girl, even going so far as to outrageously call him an outsider. It made him recall Lyndon, that good-for-nothing father of his. Back then, he was willing to abandon everything for a woman, even to the point of dying for love. A thoroughly unfilial son, he would never allow Lyndon to follow in his father's footsteps. For men, when it comes to changing hearts, there's always a first time and countless times after, and the more devoted a woman is, the less she can tolerate even the slightest betrayal, whether it's Frida or Lee Frida. As long as she can divert Lyndon's attention away from Candace, that's all that matters. He might not be able to control Lyndon, but he knows Candace all too well. As long as Lyndon is entangled with another woman, that girl will surely leave on her own. Without Candace, Lyndon will naturally walk right back onto the path he's arranged. Lyndon gazed at the enigmatic smile on his grandfather's face, feeling an inexplicable wave of panic rise within him. He rubbed his tight chest and clenched his fists. No, everything will be fine. He had arranged everything long ago. Candace would surely be waiting obediently for him. Once he cleaned up this mess here, he would go find her and explain everything. Candace understood him so well, she would surely comprehend his difficulties. Finally, the wedding was over. Lyndon tore off the groom's boutonniere from his chest and turned to leave the hall. Wait a minute, Frida stopped him. Don't forget to accompany me back to school later, you promised. Lyndon frowned and replied with forced patience. All right, but just as he was about to step out of the auditorium doors, another group blocked his path. This time, it was Grandpa Scott's men. Young master. The old master is at the ancestral hall. He requests your presence. It was phrased as a request, yet carried an air of undeniable command. Lyndon took a deep breath and loosened his tie with a lift of his hand. He pulled out his phone, fingers flying across the screen as he typed. Candace, I've got an unexpected business trip these 2 days. I'll come see you as soon as I'm done. The success notification popped up before he finally stepped toward the ancestral hall. Inside the hall, incense smoke curled upward, Grandpa Scott kneeling on the prayer mat with his eyes closed. Lyndon stepped forward to light 3 incense sticks, then knelt down as well, Seeing the old man remain motionless for a long while, he grew restless and rose to leave only to be stopped by a sharp shout. "Halt!" Lyndon turned back. His eyes filled with resolve. "Old man, you said that as long as I got married to someone else, you'd allow me to take Candace to City S. Now I've done it. Time to keep your promise." Tony suddenly laughed. "Lyndon, things were never as simple as you thought. Have you considered that while you've met my condition, how should Candace position herself?" He slowly opened his eyes, his gaze like tempered ice. "Your marriage certificate with her is fake. And now the internet is flooded with videos of your wedding with Frida. Do you really think Candace would be magnanimous enough to pretend nothing happened?" Lyndon's heart began to pound. Faster and faster, suppressing the panic in his chest, he insisted stubbornly, "I won't let Candace find out about any of this. You'd better keep your word." He turned his head, his voice laced with a hint of menace. "If you dare lay a finger on her again, don't blame me for showing no mercy." With those words, the ancestral hall door was slammed shut with force by him. Grandpa Scott gazed at his son's memorial tablet on the altar, a knowing smile curling at the corners of his mouth. Meanwhile, Lyndon's footsteps faltered slightly in the corridor, the old man's words pierced like needles, densely pricking at his heart. His outward composure was merely a fragile facade, but then he thought again and forcibly steadied his mind. Candace's world revolved solely around him. From the age of 7 to 25, 18 years of her life, she was the girl he had raised and protected with his own hands. Even if the sky were to fall, he was confident she would forgive him. In his entire life, there were only two people he truly held dear in his heart. One was the grandfather before him, and the other was Candace. Yet these two were as incompatible as fire and water. Grandfather always said he resembled that good-for-nothing father too much. Back then, for the sake of a woman, that man abandoned both father and son, ultimately meeting his end in a love-suicide. Scott family men must never let love bind their hands and feet. The old man's words echoed in his ears like a curse. Over and over, so Grandpa secretly swapped his and Candace's marriage certificate, making them legal strangers. Consequently, business cards from unknown women would mysteriously appear in his study. There was even a time when Grandpa cruelly drugged him, but fortunately he managed to break free with all his might. Candace had also rebelled over these matters, sneaking away once, only to be frantically hunted down and brought back by him. Holding her close, he whispered a solemn vow in her ear, "In this lifetime, there will only ever be you, Candace, by my side." Lyndon. Yet his steadfastness only invited increasingly ruthless tactics from Grandpa. The family punishments that fell upon Candace behind his back, those hidden scars in the shadows, each discovery left him heartbroken to the point of suffocation, until that day when, with reddened eyes, he roared at his grandfather, "Candace is my life. Compared to her, even a so-called grandfather like you should step aside. What right do you have to lay a hand on her?" From that moment onward, his grandfather's methods grew increasingly ruthless. Car accidents, kidnappings, endless accidents forced him to protect Candace even tighter. He even used possessiveness as an excuse to stop Candace from attending college. In his eyes, that bit of education was far less important than her safety. To completely break free from his grandfather, his methods began turning radical, until Lyndon was set up by the Norman family over a piece of land. Finding himself in grave danger, Rodney demanded by name that Candace be exchanged for him. Candace charged into the Norman family alone and endured 3 days and nights of torment before Rodney finally agreed to let him go. When he saw Candace covered in wounds, without a single patch of unbroken skin, he was truly terrified. Later, Candace's accidental miscarriage became the final straw that broke him. He stormed into the old man's study with a knife. "I can't live without Candace in this lifetime. Tell me, what will it take for you to let us go? Oh, if you refuse to let us go," he pressed the knife against his own neck, "you can lose your only grandson right now." It was then that the old man threw out that tempting offer. "Lyndon, as long as you can marry any woman other than Candace and get legally registered, I'll allow you to take her to City S and never interfere with your affairs again." He agreed. "Fine, but I get to choose this woman myself." The old man nodded. The sound of a woman's high heels echoed from the end of the corridor, growing louder as it approached, interrupting his thoughts. He suddenly snapped back to reality and looked up. Frida's figure just happened to catch his eye. A breeze brushed through the treetops, scattering dappled light across her figure, and for a fleeting moment, it reminded him of their first encounter. It was at H University's art gallery. Moonlight poured through the observation window on the top floor, spilling over the silhouette standing by the piano. Fingers danced across the keys, each note like an angel's blessing, cleansing the soul. He couldn't pinpoint the source of that sudden stirring emotion. Just as he stepped closer for a better look, his phone abruptly rang. By the time he finished the call and returned, all he saw was a masked girl walking out of the piano room. Glancing at the name on the textbook in her hand, he saw elegant handwriting spelling Frida. Watching the girl's nearly fleeing figure, he suddenly chuckled lightly. If his Candace could have gone to college, she would probably have been just as bright and lovely. So, when his grandfather asked him to choose a woman to marry, the first person he thought of was Frida. The moment the girl nodded with a flushed face, he unexpectedly caught a glimpse of Candace in her eyes. Perhaps out of guilt, whenever he was with Frida, he always unconsciously carried a compensatory attitude. Frida walked over and stood beside him, naturally looping her arm through his. "Mr. Lyndon, let's go." He meant to withdraw his hand, but his gaze traced past her face, outlining the contours of Candace. He had witnessed Candace's stubbornness, her resilience, and even her brokenness. Yet he was beginning to forget her original innocence and beauty. They two should have had such peaceful and tranquil times. The thought that he could take Candace far away once matters here were settled filled him with a long-lost excitement, and so he indulged Frida's closeness. Longing grew like vines from the depths of his heart. He truly missed Candace. Soon, they arrived at H University. The graduation ceremony had passed, leaving the campus much emptier. The two walked past the alumni wall, covered with Frida's photos with her mentors and classmates. Lyndon's gaze swept quickly until it reached the topmost photo, which suddenly seized his full attention. Frida followed his line of sight and turned deathly pale in an instant. "Why is Candace's photo here?" Lyndon pointed at the picture, his voice trembling. Frida smoothed her hair, masking her panic as her eyes darted rapidly. "Probably because Ms. Candace also likes Mr. Peter's piano pieces. They happened to meet at the graduation ceremony and took a photo together. Nothing unusual about that." Lyndon took a deep breath, forcibly suppressing the absurd suspicion rising in his heart. Candace, how could she possibly be a graduate of H University? Yet deep down, he felt he might have overlooked something crucial. Just as he was about to ponder further, his assistant came running over breathlessly with a box. "Mr. Lyndon, there's a package for you, it seems to be." Before the assistant could finish, Lyndon's phone suddenly rang. He frowned as he answered, hearing an unfamiliar male voice through the receiver. "Hello, this is First People's Hospital. May I speak to Mr. Lyndon?" "This is he. What's the matter?" His fingers gripping the phone tightened unconsciously. "Mr. Lyndon, I'm from the hospital security office. We have some lost items of yours here. Could you come to claim them?" The voice on the other end sounded urgent. Lyndon looked bewildered. "I haven't lost anything. Are you sure you have the right person?" "No mistake," the other party said with certainty. "There are two numbers listed here. We tried calling Miss Candace first but couldn't get through, so we contacted you instead." "All right, I'll be there shortly." After hanging up, Lyndon remembered he had arranged for Candace to be in the special care unit of the sanatorium. He immediately dialed the sanatorium's number, and a respectful voice answered. "Mr. Lyndon, how may I assist you?" Lyndon rubbed his temples. "Get Candace from the special care ward on the phone." There was a brief silence on the other end of the line before a hesitant voice responded. "Mr. Lyndon, the VIP special care ward you reserved is currently unoccupied. Could there be some mistake?" Lyndon felt his heart drop and his scalp prickle as his voice turned icy cold. "Absolutely not." The voice on the phone grew increasingly cautious. "Mr. Lyndon, the hospital floor you reserved has indeed remained vacant. The hospital administration even specifically checked on this matter today. We didn't dare confirm with you directly for fear of disturbing your wedding." Lyndon's mind was in complete turmoil. He hung up the phone and immediately rushed toward the parking lot. Frida considerately took the package handed by her assistant, quickening her steps to catch up, while a faint sneer unconsciously crept across her lips. Lyndon drove the car at breakneck speed. He kept dialing Stan's number while driving. No answer. It was always no answer. Damn it. He angrily smashed his phone against the steering wheel. In the end, he decided to first check the villa he shared with Candace. Only then did he belatedly remember Frida in the passenger seat. His voice cold and hard as ice. "Get out. Take a cab back yourself." Frida looked at him with reddened eyes, her gaze brimming with grievance. Lyndon turned a blind eye, his voice icy cold. "Don't forget why we got together in the first place. The contract has ended. I've already given you everything you wanted. Stop coveting what doesn't belong to you." Frida slowly stepped out of the car and timidly asked, "Mr. Lyndon, if I need help, can I still come to you?" In response to her, there was only Lyndon's car disappearing in a cloud of dust. watching the car vanish around the street corner, Frida finally straightened up. The look of grievance on her face instantly faded, replaced by an almost eerie calmness. She picked up the phone, her voice sweet. "Honey, it's done. Come pick me up." As she spoke, she happily shook the secretly swapped package in her hand, a sly glint flashing in her eyes. Back at the villa, Lyndon stared at the charred remains, his heart swelling with panic once more. It dawned on him belatedly that this villa held all the memories he shared with Candace, all reduced to ashes in a single fire. My heart felt hollow. Stan had reported it was a gas leak that caused the blaze. The cold wind swirled, lifting a piece of paper with one charred edge. He quickly grabbed it and examined it closely. It was a check. The date signed was the day he spent Candace's anniversary with her. In a flash, fragmented memories raced through his mind. Hospital, injured pedestrians, checks. That check was clearly meant for the mistakenly injured pedestrian. At the time he was busy dealing with Frida, only thinking about not letting Grandpa notice anything amiss. That pedestrian, how could it be Candace? Lyndon's hand clutching the check trembled uncontrollably as the color gradually drained from his face. He recalled that familiar Buddhist prayer bead bracelet in the hospital's nursing room. Remembered the lost and found call from the security office. All the clues were like scattered beads suddenly threaded together by an invisible string. He leaped onto the vehicle and rushed to the hospital security office, where the staff was startled by his expression. "I'm Lyndon, here to claim lost property." The staff carefully brought out the bracelet, which still bore traces of dried blood. On the bracelet's nameplate were his and Candace's names and phone numbers. Lyndon reached out to take it, and as his fingertips touched the icy bead, his entire body shuddered violently. His heart felt as if it had been stuffed into a sealed plastic bag, brutally squeezed and battered. The pain so intense he could barely breathe. Only one thought flashed through his mind. Candace, she knew. His Candace had been standing right there, watching him fuss over another woman, hearing him call someone else baby, and he, to put on a show for his grandfather, personally hurt the girl he cherished most in his heart. So, the injury on her wrist that day was caused by him. What's even more ridiculous is that later, he held her in his arms, swearing to find the person who hurt her and seek revenge for her. Lyndon could no longer hold on, his legs giving way as he knelt on the floor, his forehead pressed against the ground, shoulders trembling violently, suppressed sobs escaping from his throat. Where is she now, that Candace who was sent away by Stan? Who was she? Overwhelming fear made Lyndon feel like a fish thrown ashore, gasping futilely for air that wouldn't come. At that very moment, the phone rang. He numbly picked up the call, hearing his assistant's panicked voice through the receiver. "Mr. Lyndon, the private jet you arranged for the exclusive route. It crashed into the sea. We've already sent people to salvage it. We've confirmed that Ms. Candace was on board. Please, accept our condolences." Crack. The phone hit the ground with a heavy thud. Lyndon's pupils suddenly dilated, his vision went black, and he fainted. Meanwhile, far away in country W, Candace was staring blankly at the mountain of gifts before her. She was Victor who brought her back, and after 3 days of observation in the hospital, she finally met her family, her brother, Tim. Tim sat in a wheelchair, and the doctor told Candace, "Mr. Tim's leg condition is psychogenic. He'll recover the day he decides to stand up again." Candace nodded. She felt somewhat awkward around this unfamiliar brother. Still, she spoke softly. "Don't we need to do a paternity test?" Tim smiled, his phoenix eyes narrowing just like Candace's. "Candace, come with me." Candace promptly followed Tim as he maneuvered his wheelchair. He stopped before a carved wooden door. The hand holding the key trembled slightly. With a creak, the wooden door swung open. The scent of aged wood flooded his nostrils. Distant memories were also awakened by the dust-covered wooden door. Candace seemed to see her childhood self. She sat on the little wooden horse, tilting her head up and sweetly calling out "brother." Beside her, her mother took the opportunity to feed her a spoonful of seafood porridge. The beautiful woman wore a gentle smile as she ruffled the little tuft of hair on her daughter's head. Happiness spilled through the room like sunlight. A little further away, a long-legged man sat with his legs crossed, capturing this heartwarming scene on his sketchpad, until Tim called her. Candace only then snapped back to reality, the tears welling in her eyes silently falling, and before her eyes was that very painting. Candace trembled as she traced her fingers over the faces of her parents in the painting. In the photo frame beside it, her face bore a 90% resemblance to her mother's. Tim whispered in her ear, "On their way to find you." Mom and Dad saved many people. In a tsunami, they saved 10 children. When the mother was swept away by the waves, the father was pulled in trying to hold on to her. Now that you're finally back, They can rest in peace." As the words fell, Tim opened an even larger room. Inside were all kinds of unopened gifts. "Candace, this is the gift we've prepared for you all these years, for your birthdays, every holiday, all of them. Now, they've finally found their owner. Candace, welcome home." Candace's tears fell in heavy drops. It turned out her family loved her so much. Her father Wright was a renowned painter, and her mother Tracy was a pianist. She should have grown up in such a family, but at the age of 7, she got lost while playing outside with her brother. Fortunately, she was Lyndon who picked her up. Otherwise, she would have died that winter night. So, she had been grateful and had loved Lyndon passionately. Even this surname was still Lyndon's mother's maiden name. Only, all of that was now in the past. Now she is the Yee family's Candace, caressing the antique piano left by her mother. Melodious piano notes filled the entire villa. Mother's smile, father's love, all danced at her fingertips. The soul resonates with the sound of the piano. Tim shuddered his shoulders and shed his first tear since his parents left. Fortunately, his sister posted a missing person notice on the dark web, pulling him back from hell. The next day, Victor arrived. Tim dragged him into the study. Candace heard thumping sounds coming from inside, mixed with a man's questioning. Candace could hardly imagine the usually gentle and refined Tim speaking so loudly. Fearing something might go wrong, she gently knocked on the study door. "Bro, Mr. Victor. Are you both okay?" The study immediately fell silent. The one who opened the door was Tim, his face still flushed with lingering anger. Meanwhile, Victor sat on the sofa with his long legs crossed, the narrow corners of his eyes reddened, and a bruise still visible at the corner of his mouth. He reached out his hand, doing his best to conceal it. Candace took in everything and spoke softly. "Mr. Victor, do you need help?" No need." Two male voices rang out simultaneously. "Brother, Mr. Victor saved my life. If it weren't for him, I wouldn't have been able to come back to see you." At that critical moment, it wasn't that he was taking advantage of me. Victor timely let out a hiss of pain. Candace fetched the first aid kit and used an alcohol swab to tend to Victor's split lip. Focused on her task, she didn't notice Victor's increasingly red ears or her brother's clenched fists. Candace stood up. "There," she said, then turned to look at Tim. "Bro, I need to report to school today." Victor stood up as well, his nearly 1.9-meter frame exuding overwhelming presence. "Candace, we're heading the same way." Candace looked at the sulking Tim. "Bro, aren't you going to take me to school?" Tim, who hadn't gone out for a long time, froze in place. At this moment, Lyndon had just regained consciousness. He was dazed for an instant. A tidal wave of memories surged up, threatening to tear his heart apart. He ignored the nurse's attempts to stop him. He pulled out the 4 needle from his arm, grabbed his phone, and was about to walk out. He refused to believe his Candace was dead. There were still too many things he hadn't figured out. Standing at the door, Stan spoke calmly. "Young master, the master wants you to rest in the hospital." Lyndon threw a punch at Stan the moment he saw him. "You goddamn traitor, Stan, how dare you side with the old man behind my back?" Stan didn't fight back, letting him vent his anger. Lyndon rubbed his throbbing head. "Tell me, where the hell did you take Candace? Why does the sanatorium say no one ever came for her?" Stan scoffed lightly, his words slicing through Lyndon like a knife flaying flesh. "The young master personally delivered it to Norman's house. Don't you remember?" Lyndon frantically pounded on Stan. "Impossible. Didn't you say that was Candace's double? I've even met that woman's family. How could it be Candace?" Stan smiled pityingly. "Young master, you dare to believe the master's words." With that, he handed him a package. "Please open it and take a look. It's said to be from Ms. Candace." Lyndon snatched the package like a drowning man grasping at floating wood, his hands trembling as he opened it. It was a mobile phone, as if by some premonition. The phone began to ring. Lyndon answered the call to hear a man's voice on the other end. "Haha, Lyndon, you're still alive." The voice made Lyndon nearly crush his phone. "Rodney, what the hell are you playing at? Is Candace with you? I'm telling you, if you lay a finger on her, I'll fight you to the death." The person opposite laughed even more recklessly. "Lyndon, if you want to know about Candace, come to my dock." Lyndon grabbed his car keys and headed out. Stan blocked his path. "Young master, the master insists you rest." Lyndon gritted his teeth, enunciating each word with deadly precision. "Whoever stands in my way dies." Stan remained unmoved. Lyndon swiftly delivered a karate chop, knocking him unconscious before storming out of the hospital. Speeding through the streets, he reached his destination in no time. Lyndon gazed at the charred remains of the Norman family's ancestral home, lost in thought. Soon, 2 rows of burly men stood before him. Rodney stood in the center, his shoulder-length hair tied back. He looked at the utterly exhausted Lyndon with a roguish grin. "Yo, looking a bit rough there, aren't you?" Lyndon wore an expression of disgust. "Cut the crap, where's Candace?" Rodney grinned. "Well now, Mr. Lyndon, is that how you ask for favors? If I get unhappy, I might just forget certain things, like where Candace is." With that, he gave a meaningful glance. Lyndon was pinned to the ground, forced onto one knee. Lyndon glared at him. "Rodney, don't push your luck." Rodney sauntered over lazily, his polished shoe tip nudging Lyndon's knee. "Lyndon, can't handle this already? Then how are you going to stomach what I'm about to say next?" "Haha," he clapped his hands. "First, let's invite the hero of this operation." The crowd parted to both sides. A woman stepped forward. Lyndon looked up. It was Frida. She stepped forward in her high heels and nestled into Rodney's arms. Rodney placed his hand on Frida's shoulder, while Lyndon stared at her in disbelief. "You too," Rodney smiled. "Isn't it obvious to someone as clever as Mr. Lyndon?" Lyndon glared viciously at Frida and snarled, "You conspired with Rodney, you killed Candace." He struggled to stand up but was yanked back by the burly man behind him. Rodney smirked triumphantly. "Wrong, she wasn't colluding with me, but rather," he paused, grinning wickedly, "she's always been mine. What do you think? Doesn't she carry Candace's shadow? I raised her specifically to lure you in. Never thought you'd actually take the bait." One bloody truth after another left Lyndon dizzy and disoriented. Rodney's expression suddenly turned vicious as he grabbed Lyndon's collar. "Lyndon, I've been coveting Candace since I was 16. You got her and still didn't know how to cherish her. Yeah, I'm a bastard, but at least I'm openly rotten. Unlike you, brave enough to cheat, but too cowardly to admit it." Lyndon stood up, ready to hit Rodney. Frida pulled out a phone and waved it in her hand. "Mr. Lyndon. Recognize whose phone this is?" Lyndon's pupils contracted. Frida gave a light laugh. "If you want to get Candace's phone, then Mr. Lyndon will have to experience the same path Candace once walked to save you. Come, activate the Yama's array for Mr. Lyndon." Lyndon's anxious face flashed with confusion. "What are you talking about?" Rodney gave a sinister chuckle from the side. "Oh, I forgot Mr. Lyndon doesn't know yet. Back then, Candace came to Norman's house to exchange for you in order to save you. Isn't she foolish? She only needed to accompany me for a few days. Yet she chose to brave the notorious Yama's array just to preserve her purity. Didn't you all think Candace was ruined by me? Now you can experience the truth of what happened back then firsthand." As the words fell, Lyndon was dragged to witness the mountain of blades and sea of fire before him. Beneath his feet were red-hot coals, while blades flew through the air at unpredictable intervals. He was handed a bow with only 3 arrows. With these 3 arrows, he had to pass through the array of blades, and this was only the first trial. So this was the path Candace had taken to preserve her innocence, a path of utter desperation. No wonder she hadn't dared to touch a blade again since that day. Lyndon squeezed his eyes shut tightly, feeling the searing pain radiating from his feet. Yet Rodney's words burned hotter than the coals. "Lyndon, she took so many stabs for you, endured so many wounds. How did you repay her? By letting your grandfather kill the child in her womb, searching for her shadow in other women. The reason I groomed Frida was out of sheer spite. I wanted to show Candace that you, Lyndon, aren't worthy." Lyndon's heart was being carved apart by every word. "Lyndon, you coward, admit it, you love Candace but also look down on her. That's why, torn by this conflict, you made Frida your safe harbor. If it weren't Frida, it would have been someone else. Stop using the excuse of fooling your grandfather." Phut! The flying knife sliced through Lyndon's flesh, blood splattered. Staining his vision red, he defended himself. "Rodney, you vile worm, my devotion to Candace is as clear as heaven and earth. Who made you the judge of this? You think you're any better? My only regret is not making you rot longer in prison." Finally reaching the end, Lyndon snatched Candace's phone from Frida's hand. His hands trembled as he opened it. The wallpaper was a graduation certificate. Lyndon was thunderstruck. Candace was a graduate of H University. Frida admired his expression for a moment before kindly reminding him, "She and I were classmates, you know." At her words, Lyndon jerked his head up abruptly. He pointed at Frida and exclaimed, "So this was all part of your scheme too? That time during your video call, the person on the other end was Candace?" Frida nodded innocently. "Exactly. I even kindly pointed it out to you back then. Pity you thought it was just a coincidence of names. Oh, she was there on the proposal day too. And I even sent her our marriage certificate. Check her message history. She congratulated me at the time." Lyndon flipped through his phone, reading each message one by one. "Candace. I've finally tied the knot with my dream guy. Candace, I'm in City S now, and I can't believe he built me a swan castle. I'm so happy. Candace, he's amazing in bed. I really hit the jackpot. So shy, the wedding gift you gave me was torn by him. Boo-hoo. Candace, there's an older woman in his house. He says he's keeping her out of gratitude, but I got mad. Now he's being punished, standing in the heavy rain like a stone statue waiting for his wife. Lyndon clenched his fists, his fingers cracking audibly. Frida, when have I ever touched you? You know perfectly well that marriage certificate was fake. Everything was just to deceive Grandpa. Ours was purely a contractual relationship. Why would you do this? Lyndon thought of Candace's heartbreak and despair upon seeing those words, wishing he could tear Frida before him to pieces. Frida sneered. Why, I was raised to be her shadow. The man I love has her in his heart. This little suffering is nothing compared to the pain in my heart. Lyndon raised his hand in anger, but it never came down. Asterisk slap asterisk. Frida was Rodney slapped to the ground. She covered her face, looking at Rodney in disbelief. Who do you think you are? I allowed you to seduce Lyndon, but I never permitted you to provoke Candace. Who I care about is none of your business to question. Get out. Wait. Lyndon called out to her, his voice trembling as he asked. Was it really you playing the piano that day? Frida looked at him and smiled pityingly. Mr. Lyndon, don't you already have the answer in your heart? Why bother asking me? Or, you could ask him. She pointed at Rodney. Ask him whose piano pieces he's been secretly recording every day. Hearing his words, Lyndon's face turned ashen inch by inch. He recalled the figure fleeing in panic under the moonlight that was unmistakably Candace. The Candace who was afraid of being recognized by him. Wrong, all wrong. The one he's always loved is Candace. He was never distracted, just played by Rodney. Rodney looked at the expression on his face and shamelessly laughed. Ha, Lyndon, what does it matter if you won her over? You're still dancing to my tune. By the way, take a good look at the message logs and call recordings. There are more surprises waiting for you. Lyndon continued scrolling through his phone. He came across Candace's notebook. Almost got exposed today. Wasn't HN supposed to be on a business trip? How did he end up at H University? That was just an impromptu performance. No idea if it sounded good. Would HN like it? Finally got my degree certificate. This time I'll definitely make HN see me in a new light. When should I tell him? Our anniversary or graduation ceremony? I'd love to see HN's stunned expression. No, I need to keep it together. Let's not go to the music academy in Country W. That little jealous bin HN definitely couldn't handle me being so far away from him. Lyndon gazed at those words as if seeing the radiant, vivacious Candace before him. She stood on the awards podium as an outstanding graduate, while he watched her from below with tender pride in his eyes. This was how it should have ended. But what has he done? Proposing to someone else, deceiving, showing favoritism, even personally handing her over to Rodney. Each and every act shattered Candace's every expectation. His heart felt as if filled with lead, sinking heavily downward. While browsing through the message history, Lyndon saw that Candace had agreed to study abroad. His heart began pounding violently. Candace really went to Country W. But the plane had crashed. Yesterday's receding panic came surging back with even greater ferocity. With trembling hands, he dialed the aviation department's number. Excuse me. About that plane bound for Country W that crashed into the sea. On the other end, they directly asked him, Are you Mr. Lyndon? We've found some belongings of the victims here. Would you like to come take a look? Lyndon opened and closed his lips but couldn't make a sound. Finally, he barely managed to squeeze out one word. Okay, now he felt like he was walking on cotton, each step failing to find solid ground. His hand unconsciously brushed against Candace's call recording. Brother, come save me quickly. Rodney drugged me. Lyndon suddenly froze. How long had it been since he last heard Candace call him brother? This was their distress signal between them. Candace, when did she call him? He brought the phone closer to his eyes. 10 calls. Candace had called him a full 10 times. Why hadn't he received them? He continued listening to the recordings, heard the voices of myself and Frida. Darling, are you pregnant? That's wonderful news. Honey, I was so scared just now. My stomach hurts terribly. I'll take you to the hospital right away. That MS. Candace, sweetheart, all you need to do now is take good care of yourself. Don't overthink anything else. Be good. What about our wedding? It'll happen as scheduled, of course. Oops, I accidentally pressed the button and hung up. Lyndon punched the wall. Frida. It was Frida who tampered with his phone, making him miss Candace's distress call, even causing Candace to hear the lies he told to deceive his grandfather. He closed his eyes, recalling the events of that day. Yes, he later received a call from Rodney. What did he say? Rodney. I've already handed the person over to you. Don't bother me again. Oh, then I can deal with that person as I please. Don't come looking for me even if you die, Frida. What's wrong with you? Ah, Lyndon cried out in pain. Candace must have heard it. What the hell was he doing when she needed him most? No, he had to find Candace and tell her he only said those things because he thought she was a double. He didn't know it was Candace herself who was sent to Rodney. He would find Candace first, then deal with them. At this thought, he headed straight for the airport. The airport staff handed him a small package. Mr. Lyndon, your private jet experienced engine failure and crashed into the sea. You may discuss compensation matters with the insurance company. No one wants something like this to happen. My condolences. Lyndon clutched the cloth bag tightly to his chest and collapsed into a seat. After mustering his courage for a long time, he finally opened the bag. Inside were only a diamond ring and a small piece of fabric. This was the diamond ring he had used to propose to Candace on her 20th birthday. The ring was now slightly charred. That piece of fabric was from the dress he had bought for Candace. There was a dried bloodstain on it. All the evidence pointed to one undeniable fact: Candace had perished. But he refused to believe it. They had promised to live 100 years together and share the same grave. Candace couldn't leave first. Young master, a voice called out from behind. Lyndon didn't even lift his eyelids, immediately dismissing them. Get out, young master. The airport surveillance didn't capture Candace boarding the plane. Lyndon finally looked directly at Stan, his unfocused pupils beginning to sharpen. You're saying Candace never boarded the plane at all? There's a very high probability. Lyndon shook his muddled head. He'd been too distraught to think clearly. Going straight to his assistant to have the surveillance footage checked, he then drove to find Rodney. Stan called after him. The master is waiting for you at the old house. Lyndon turned back coldly. Tell Grandpa that if he doesn't want me to follow in Dad's footsteps, he shouldn't stop me. If it weren't for him, Candace and I wouldn't have ended up like this. He'd better pray. Candace is all right. Returning once more to Norman's house dock, he called Rodney directly. Where's Candace? Rodney appeared behind him. Lyndon turned off the screen and pocketed his phone. He suddenly threw a punch at Rodney. What did you give Candace? Rodney turned his head back after being struck. Didn't Mr. Lyndon tell me to handle it as I saw fit? Settling scores now seems a bit unfair. Lyndon suppressed his temper. Rodney, did you know Candace didn't board the plane I arranged for her? Rodney scoffed. Now you're worried. Candace was picked up by someone. Lyndon grabbed Rodney's sleeve. Explain yourself. What do you mean picked up by someone? Besides City H, Candace hardly knows anyone else. Rodney cursed angrily. Lyndon, where's your brain? Didn't you see both our Norman family mansion and your villa were burned down? Doesn't that strike you as suspicious? Lyndon frowned. Are you saying someone took Candace and erased the traces? Who could it be? Candace's acquaintance. In that instant, he thought of that photo from H University. Perhaps her advisor knew something. When he drove to H University, he happened to see Professor Fang seeing off a music troupe. He quietly approached her and stated his purpose. Professor Fang eyed him suspiciously. Student Candace never mentioned you to me. Lyndon had no choice but to take out his phone and show a photo album picture of him with Candace. Lyndon suddenly reddened his eyes. Professor Fang finally let his guard down. I can give you the phone number of Candace's orchestra. You can ask them about the situation. Lyndon stared at those digits as if they were a lifeline. After profusely thanking the professor, he left. But when the call went through, the person on the other end claimed to know nothing about the situation. Lyndon threw his phone. Stan dragged him straight back to the Scott family ancestral home. Grandpa Scott sat on the sandalwood sofa, his cane placed beside him. He let out a deep sigh. The originally flawless plan had been completely ruined by Candace's fake death. Lyndon met his gaze and cut straight to the chase. Grandfather, I'm going to Country W. Grandpa Scott looked at his grandson. Frustrated by his inability to meet expectations, you're banned from entering Country W. Wasn't that the escape route you prepared for Candace? Since things have come to this, you should let her go. Grandpa, Candace misunderstood me. I need to go explain things to her. And I'm not discussing this with you, I'm informing you. From now on, I won't let you harm Candace ever again. Someone, Grandpa isn't feeling well, send him to the sanatorium for rest. Grandpa Scott threw his cane at his feet. You insolent brat, how dare you rebel against me? Lyndon gazed at him coldly. Grandfather, you forced me to do this. I only regret not making this decision sooner. Instead of agreeing to your rotten terms, he looked at his grandfather, who had aged considerably, and sighed softly. Grandfather, you knew all along that Candace would leave me. That's why you proposed those terms. Only I was foolish enough to believe that once this was over, I could live happily with Candace. He paused, as if making some firm resolution. Grandpa, if anything happens to Candace, our bond as grandfather and grandchild will be over. After saying this, he had someone take Grandpa Scott away. Then, he made a phone call. Arrange a new identity for me. I'm going to Country W. It'll take 3 months. Lyndon frowned. All right, make it quick. He walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, gazing at the sea of city lights. 3 months should be enough Candace to get revenge. Meanwhile, on the day Candace went to register at school, Tim still didn't come out to see her off. He still hadn't gotten over that mental hurdle. That year he lost his sister while playing outside, a pain that would haunt him forever. According to Victor's investigation, his beloved sister had endured immense suffering. His family's Candace could have grown up happy and carefree. His debt of sin remains unpaid. Candace has been in school for a month and a half now. At the opening ceremony, she even performed a piano piece. It caused quite a sensation. The whole college knows there's a talented and beautiful freshman in this year's class. Recently, she has been preparing for the orchestra performance next week. Time heals all wounds. She has already adapted to her family and new life, except for that rather clingy senior Victor. They tacitly avoided mentioning the incident where he had saved her before. For the time being, Candace had no intention of starting another relationship. Candace, a gift for you, Victor called out cheerfully. Would you like to give it a try? Candace looked at the sleek black horse before her, her eyes lighting up. Yet the fear from her last fall came rushing back, magnified in her mind. She shook her head gently. I don't want to ride. Victor tugged at her sleeve. Candace, I can lead the horse for you. Are you sure you don't want to try? Candace looked into the dark horse's adorable big eyes, then glanced at Victor's reassuringly sturdy frame. Let's give it a try then. Victor magically produced protective gear as if performing a trick. After helping Candace put it on, Victor let out a deep breath, the flush on his face only slightly fading. Victor led the horse to the seaside. As the gentle sea breeze blew, Candace felt a surge of emotions in her heart. She longed to play the piano. Victor seemed to read her thoughts. There stood a pure white piano in the seaside pavilion. Candace, this is the Turnants family's private property. You can do whatever you want here. Victor helped her dismount from the horse and smoothed her hair tousled by the sea breeze. Candace sat before the piano, facing the ocean wind as she lifted the keyboard cover. The melodious sound of the zither flowed toward the evening beach. Victor leaned against the pavilion pillar, listening to the melodious tune with his eyes closed. He was lost in memories of his childhood. Behind him, Candace, with her 2 little buns tied up, trotted on her short legs, sweetly calling him Brother Victor. In the blink of an eye, she was painfully curled up in Norman's house, her face streaked with tears. He clenched his fists. 2 hours later, Candace stopped, suddenly realizing how much time had been wasted due to his momentary whim. I'm sorry for keeping you waiting so long. Victor chuckled softly as he draped his coat over her shoulders. Attending a solo concert by the great night pianist is a rare privilege many would envy. Why are you apologizing? Unless you're telling me such opportunities won't come again. Candace laughed at his remark. You can listen anytime you want. Victor seized the moment to ask. Then may I treat you to dinner as a token of gratitude? This time Candace declined with a smile. That won't be necessary, my brother's waiting for me at home. But if you don't mind, you could join us for dinner. Tim rolled his eyes at Victor, who had come over to mooch a meal. Candace noticed the paint stains on his clothes and smiled delightedly. Brother, you've started painting again. Tim nodded with slight embarrassment. Quickly changing the subject, he said, Candace, now that you're back, I should show you our family's business. If you're interested, you can take part in managing it yourself. Candace didn't expose his little secret. Once he picked up the paintbrush, standing up and walking couldn't be far behind. After all, she didn't want Tim to be trapped in self-blame. A plate of sliced steak was handed to her. Victor winked at her, watching their interaction. Tim gritted his teeth. Victor, my sister doesn't marry out, she only takes in a son-in-law. You don't meet the requirements. That old marriage alliance was just the adult's joke. It shouldn't be taken seriously. As he spoke, he served Candace a bowl of seafood soup. But for some reason, Candace felt her stomach churning violently. Seeing the situation take a bad turn, Victor quickly picked her up and drove to the hospital. The words 4 weeks pregnant on the report made her vision darken, and she nearly vomited again. Victor frantically patted her back to soothe her. Are you feeling very unwell? Is there anything you'd like to eat? I'll go buy it. No one knew what had crossed his mind, but his ears turned so red they seemed to drip blood. At home, Tim let out a furious roar upon hearing the test results and overturned the easel. Candace felt bewildered. The unexpected arrival of this child had disrupted her rhythm. When they returned home again, Tim had already composed himself. Candice, whether to keep this child or not is your decision, our family can afford it either way. Candice hadn't made up her mind either. After falling asleep with a troubled heart, she had a dream. The dream scene was absurd, and upon waking, she only remembered her mother holding an angel and placing it in her arms. So, during breakfast, she announced her decision. "Brother, I've decided to keep this child." Tim nodded. "All right, I'll have someone handle your leave of absence from school," Candice agreed. But I want to participate in next week's orchestra performance." The siblings had just finished breakfast when Victor showed up at their door. A man and a woman followed behind. He introduced them to the siblings. "These two are a nutritionist and a private physician. Grandma asked me to bring them." After speaking, he glanced at their expressions. "If possible, could I also stay? The servants' quarters would be fine." Tim laughed in exasperation. "I wouldn't dare let the heir of the prestigious Turnant's family stay in the servants' quarters." Victor then dropped a bombshell. "Oh, I know, I've bought the villa next door, so I can stay there instead." Tim rubbed his temples, waved his hand, and walked away. Victor looked at Candice and produced a gift box. "This is a special line of pregnancy-safe cosmetics I had the company's road department develop just for you." Candice was touched by his thoughtfulness. Gazing into his eyes, she said, "Thank you." The day of the orchestra's performance arrived quickly. Candice wore a flowing white floor-length gown, her hair tied up high to reveal the graceful lines of her neck. In the golden hall of Country W, Candice sat before the piano. Her dream from many years ago had finally come true. She let herself immerse in the world of music. The flowing melody soared over mountains, drifted across winter snow, and pierced through layers of mist, finally witnessing the warmth of spring and blooming flowers. The performance ended with thunderous applause. At the celebration banquet, Victor wore a haute couture suit, his face capable of making any woman scream. As he carefully shielded Candice from behind, helped Candice block all the drinks, became the best flower-protecting night of the evening. When the banquet ended, Victor sharply noticed Candice seemed uncomfortable on her feet. He directly removed her high heels and scooped her up in a princess carry. Candice gazed at his sharply defined jawline, feeling a faint tremor in her heart. Meanwhile, back in their homeland, Lyndon sacrificed nearly half his fortune to finally put Rodney behind bars, and obtained the new identity he had been longing for. Candice is currently going through the suspension procedures, shuttling between home and school these past few days. Just around the school corner, she accidentally bumped into someone. Candice quickly steadied herself and bowed her head in apology. "I'm sorry," but the person pulled her into a tight embrace, voice choked with emotion. "Candice, I've finally found you." At this voice, Candice shuddered and pushed him away. "Lyndon, how did you get here?" Lyndon looked hurt. "Candice, there are many misunderstandings between us. Will you listen to my explanation?" Students passing by glanced at them curiously. Candice led him into the cafe next to the school. Lyndon spoke through tears, explaining everything. After speaking, he reached to hold Candice's hand, his tone urgent. "Candice, my relationship with Frida was purely contractual. Our marriage certificate is fake. I was deceived by my grandfather. Frida and Rodney conspired to trick me. Everything she told you was a lie. I never laid a hand on her. I didn't know it was you who was sent to the Norman family. Grandfather told me it was just your stand-in. I'm sorry." He gazed at her tenderly. "Candice, I'm so proud of you. I've already arranged for Grandpa to move into the nursing home, and Rodney has been brought to justice. No one will ever hurt you again. We'll hold our wedding as soon as you graduate." Candice listened, feeling an inevitable pang of sorrow. But as she looked at his still strikingly handsome features, not a ripple of emotion stirred within her. She withdrew her hand and spoke calmly. "Lyndon, go back, otherwise, I'll notify the embassy and have you deported." Lyndon looked at her in disbelief, coaxing softly, "Candice, I've already cleared up the misunderstanding. If there's anything still upsetting you, tell me." Candice curled her lips into a mocking smile. "Lyndon, just seeing you makes me unhappy now. Leave." Lyndon winced in pain. "Candice, I know you're still angry with me. Hit me, scold me, whatever you want, just don't hurt yourself with this anger." Candice realized she couldn't persuade him and stood up to leave. Just as he stepped out the door, Lyndon chased after him, only to see Candice get into a car. The man in the driver's seat locked eyes with him, exuding a fierce aura. Narrowing his eyes slightly, he watched them drive away. No rush, he found Candice. They'll be back together soon. The assistant approached him. "Mr. Lyndon, we've located Candice's address." Lyndon took the paper, his fingertips trembling, Prepare a gift, let's go see Candace's older brother. Candace sat in the car, visibly downcast, and Victor noticed. He asked softly, "Do you want to go horseback riding by the sea?" "I do." It was the same horse as before, but for her safety, Victor rode with her. Candace leaned against Victor's chest, feeling the warmth of the person behind her. Her heart inexplicably settled. The warm sea breeze felt like a mother's gentle touch. It dispelled the turmoil in her heart. "When I got home, I saw two people standing off against each other at the door. It's Tim and Lyndon." Scattered on the ground were the world's top-grade gemstone pigments and a few luxury car keys. Tim stomped on them furiously. "Your Scott family ruined my sister like that, and you still have the nerve to come looking for her. If it weren't for Victor bringing her back, she would have been ruined. My sister gets along very well with Victor now, and I quite approve of this brother-in-law. As for you, take your things and get out of my house." After he finished cursing, he saw Victor and Candace, who had been listening for who knows how long. Victor looked at him with shining eyes and tentatively called out, "Brother." Candace was staring at his legs. Tim only then realized belatedly that he was standing. Meanwhile, Lyndon spotted Candace and quickly stepped forward. "Candace, I'm fine. Just got scolded by our brother a couple times. I can take it." Candace took a step back, putting distance between them. "Lyndon, my brother is right. I'm going to marry Victor. You should leave." Lyndon's eyes were bloodshot, his voice hoarse. "Candace, don't joke like this, I beg you." Candace sneered and shut the door on him. The next morning when she stepped out, she realized Lyndon hadn't left. He slumped dejectedly against the car door, but when he saw Candace, a light instantly flickered in his dull eyes. "Candace, where are you going? I can give you a ride." Candace ignored him and got straight into her own car. Lyndon drove his car, following her with a listless expression. He couldn't believe that in just 2 months, his Candace could possibly fall in love with someone else. Besides, it was just a misunderstanding between them. As long as Candace got over her anger, she would surely return to him. When he came to his senses, he realized Candace had gone to the hospital. "Candace is sick. What is she doing at the hospital?" He was both annoyed at his own lack of thorough investigation and worried about Candace's health, until he followed Candace all the way to the obstetrics and gynecology department, and saw Victor already waiting there. Lyndon halted in his tracks, his heart pounding so violently he dared not take another step forward. Watching them create medical records, draw blood, conduct examinations, everything was revealing a terrifying truth: Candace was pregnant. The world seemed to spin around him as he numbly followed behind them, until a careless young nurse accidentally dropped the tray in her hands. He quickly shielded her with his body from the shattered glass fragments. Blood trickled down his arm, eerily reminiscent of the time he accidentally hurt Candace, only this time, he protected her. His voice was hoarse as he uttered, "Candace." But Candace didn't look back. The girl who once shed tears for his wounds was lost to him now. He closed his eyes briefly, refused the nurse's bandaging, and stumbled after Candace. This time he stopped in front of her, pleading humbly, "Candace, no matter whose child you're carrying, I can be its father. I can give him everything I have. Please, don't ignore me." Candace looked at him calmly. "Lyndon, do you know how this child came to be?" Lyndon, a flicker of pain flashed through his eyes. "It was you who coaxed Frida to take me, hand-delivered, to Rodney. It was you. After I called 10 times in a row, while you were celebrating the pregnancy and planning the wedding with Frida, it was you who told Rodney to deal with me as he pleased." Every word was like a knife, stabbing into Lyndon's heart. He shook his head. "That's not how it was. I never knew it was you. The pregnancy and wedding were just to deceive Grandpa. I was originally going to send you to a sanatorium, then take you to City S to live properly." Candace laughed, looking at him mockingly. "Lyndon, with so many women in the world, why did you choose Frida?" She looked at Lyndon's suddenly pale face and continued asking, "If it was all to deceive Grandpa, why didn't you tell me in advance?" Lyndon's heart felt as if struck by a heavy hammer. He wanted to explain, because he had mistaken Frida for the person who played the piano that night. He hadn't told her beforehand, fearing she might overthink it, but looking into Candace's all-knowing eyes, all the unspoken words stuck in my throat. Candace stared into his eyes. "Lyndon, ever since you and Frida put on that act, prioritizing my safety as secondary, I could never trust you again. We can't go back." With that, she let Victor escort her away. Lyndon, his vision began to blur. The nerves that had been strained for days, combined with overwhelming agitation, caused him to suddenly cough up blood and faint. In his daze, he returned to that day at the art gallery, drawn by the sound of the piano. He paused and watched as the figure under the moonlight stood up and gracefully walked toward him. At last, He could clearly see the girl's face. It was his Candace, this time. Without a phone call or mistaken identity, he called out to her, "Candace." Candace was startled at first, then playfully shook his arm. "You caught me. Did it sound nice?" He reached out with his long arms and held her tightly in his embrace. "My Candace is the best." Candace smiled with her eyes, looking up at him. "Lyndon, I graduated this year, and no one managed to steal me away." He ruffled her hair, took out a ring from his pocket, and knelt on one knee. "Candace, will you marry me again?" Candace's figure began to blur. The sweet dream was interrupted by a nurse's voice. Lyndon groggily opened his eyes to see his assistant's somewhat dejected face. Seeing him awake, they hurriedly reported, "Mr. Lyndon, there's an issue with your identity. The embassy is investigating. We should head back first." Lyndon pulled out the 4-needle and sat up. "Arrange a car. We're going to the Yi family." Meanwhile, Candace was sunbathing on a lounge chair, eating cherries that Victor had personally washed for her. "Victor, I only used you as a shield in the heat of the moment that day. Don't misunderstand." Tim looked at the overly attentive Victor, his face full of irritation. Victor took out a thin blanket and placed it beside Candace's hand, making sure she could reach it if she needed to lift her arm. "Yeah, no misunderstanding." Tim stared at his unyielding expression, shook his head, and went back to drawing. The doorbell rang. And all three people saw Lyndon's annoying face on the monitor. Tim put down his paintbrush. "I've already reported him to the embassy. Why is he still here?" Candace stood up. "Bro, I'm going out to take a look." After Candace left, Tim glanced at the calmly seated Victor. "The Turnant's family has already established themselves in City H. Can you hurry up? Don't give him any more free time to bother Candace." Victor looked at the message on his phone. Almost done." Tim rubbed his temples. "Your grandfather just lets you stay with the Yi family like this. And how did you end up switching careers to become an orchestra conductor?" Victor remained perfectly calm. "Yeah, Grandpa said when chasing a wife, you have to be persistent. If I don't succeed, he won't let me come home. As for conducting, Candace, you should be glad she's a pianist. If she were an animal trainer, I could have switched careers to stop being human." Tim laughed and cursed at him, then turned serious. "I won't interfere with you, but everything depends on Candace's will. Also, if you can't be wholeheartedly devoted, don't come bothering Candace." Victor looked at Candace's face on the surveillance screen and nodded solemnly. Only her in this lifetime. Meanwhile, on the other side, Candace and Lyndon sat on a bench by the roadside. There was a one-person distance between the two of them, yet even this short distance felt like an insurmountable chasm to Lyndon. "Candace, I have to go back now. Once I've sorted things out back home, I'll come right over. I haven't been to your concert yet, but I won't miss the next one for sure." With that, he took out a USB drive. "This is an apology video I had Frida record. You truly considered her a friend once, and she wronged you." Rodney collapsed and was taken to the nightclub. He then produced another share transfer agreement. "Candace, I'm giving you all the company's shares. Every penny I earn from now on will be yours." Candace didn't accept any of it, speaking softly. "Lyndon, it was you who took me in when I was 7. Without you, I would have died that winter night. I've already repaid you with my life. From now on, you're no longer part of my life's plans." With that, he left without looking back. The cold wind lifted the hem of her coat, like a sail setting off on a distant voyage. Lyndon clenched his fists, barely suppressing the urge to pull her into his arms. He needed to learn to give her freedom. He would pursue her all over again. His assistant whispered beside him, "Mr. Lyndon, we should leave now." Lyndon stood up, glancing at the USB drive and transfer agreement before instructing his assistant, "Send these to Candace." As the plane pierced through the clouds, Candace was playing Chopin's Farewell. A gentle breeze drifted through the window, flipping the yellowed pages of the book. 3 years later, Candace finally graduated. At this graduation ceremony, she took the stage as an outstanding graduate to deliver her speech. This once dim star has finally shed its ashes, shining brilliantly on the stage that belongs to her. Below the stage, Tim held the 2-year-old yelling in his arms, with the more composed and handsome Victor by his side. As the speech concluded, Victor stepped onto the stage and handed her a bright bouquet of sunflowers, and in a more distant corner, there was another man, greedily sketching her features. Over 3 years, Lyndon had visited Country WA 160 times, never missing a single performance of Candace. On the day she gave birth, he knelt on 1,000 temple steps to pray for another Buddhist prayer bead strand for her. Yet Candace never once saw him. His health deteriorated further. The doctor said his depression was too severe and insisted he take medication regularly. But when Candace had already taken his life with her, What use were the pills? Regret could drown him every night. On the way back, Tim left first with yelling. Victor took Candace to their usual stretch of sea. The beach was blanketed with a sea of flowers. Candace's heart trembled as she realized what he was about to do. Victor helped her onto the horse and whispered softly in her ear, "Candace, I know our beginning wasn't beautiful, it was just an accident, but I want you to know, from the moment I first saw you, my eyes could see no one else. Fate has bound us together through yelling." He took a deep breath and gazed at the distant azure sea. "You are always free to soar, only, I want to be the first person you see when you look back, so, can I?" Candace interrupted him. "Victor, let's get married." Victor froze. "Candace, what did you just say?" Candace turned and cradled his face, planting a kiss on his lips. "You heard me right, I said, let's get married." This time, Victor pulled her into a tight embrace. Candace felt a warm drop land on the side of her neck. She wanted to turn back to look at him, but he held her still. His voice trembled slightly. "Don't look, Candace, I'm just too happy. Thank you, Candace." The wedding date was quickly set, just half a month later. Upon receiving this news, Lyndon completely broke down and was hospitalized for treatment, but he didn't wait for recovery. Instead, he sneaked out of the hospital to see his grandfather. Grandpa Scott now lay in the hospital bed. Long gone was his former vigor. Lyndon sat quietly by the sickbed. "Grandpa, she's going to marry someone else. I came to tell you that I'm leaving. If there's a next life, don't stop me from being with Candace." No one knew where he went. Some say the last place Lyndon was seen was atop the Alps. Candace, upon hearing the news, she merely froze for a moment before embracing her daughter who came running toward her. The wedding proceeded as scheduled. It was exactly as she had dreamed, a pristine white wedding dress beneath a glittering starry sky. Her brother held her arm as he gave her away to Victor. Victor trembled as he slipped the ring onto her finger. By the time the ceremony ended, the sky exploded with dazzling fireworks. Victor pulled her into his embrace, surrendering all his worldly possessions. "Candace, from now on I'll be you and our daughter's wage slave." Candace smiled and gently pressed a kiss to his lips. Soon, Victor took control, and things spiraled out of hand. Tim quietly lit incense for his parents. "Mom, Dad, Candace has grown up and gotten married. You can rest in peace now." Candace didn't know that Lyndon had sought out Victor before leaving for the last time. He looked at Victor, his gaze still sharp. "If you treat Candace badly, I'll come back to take her away." Victor retorted sharply, "Sorry, but that day will never come." Lyndon looked at this version of Victor and suddenly saw himself. Back then, he had also vowed so earnestly that he would never let Candace down. Yet he broke that promise. He suddenly felt all his strength drain away. What meaning did the sweetest vows hold if they couldn't be fulfilled? Victor looked at his despondent figure and said with determination, "I'm not you. I know exactly what I want, and in my world, nothing and no one comes before Candace. Don't come looking for me again. Candace wouldn't like me seeing you." Lyndon watched his retreating figure and suddenly understood where he had lost. He wavered between family and love, hurting Candace. It could have been handled better. He looked up and saw the snow-capped peaks of the Alps. He thought that if he were to leave this world, he would bury himself there, gazing from afar at Candace. When he closed his eyes, fireworks lighting up the night sky appeared before him. In a daze, he saw the 7-year-old Candace. This time, he chased away the wild dogs and held her tightly in his arms. "Candace, I'll take you home." All he could embrace was a handful of air. A single tear fell. "Candace, I'll become a star to watch over you."